In tonight's news edition, at least 42 people are killed and hundreds others wounded in twin explosions in the northern Lebanese city of Tripoli. The UN says that 1 million Syrian children have been forced to leave their country after more than 2 years of civil conflict that has seen hundreds of thousands perish. And Tunisia's opposition says the government must quit power before they would join negotiations to resolve the country's worst crisis since its Arab Spring revolt. Good evening and welcome to the news at 10. Twin explosions outside two mosques in the Lebanese city of Tripoli killed at least 42 people and wounded hundreds in apparently coordinated attacks, the deadliest in the city since the end of Lebanon's civil war. According to accounts earlier in the day, at least 14 people were killed near the Taqwa mosque where the first blast occurred. The other deaths were reported from the second blast outside the As-Salam mosque. According to the Lebanese Red Cross, at least 500 people were wounded. In a related development, Israeli warplanes bombed a target in Lebanon in retaliation for yesterday's cross-border rocket salvo, but there were no reports of casualties. An Israeli military source said the bombed site was near Naameh, between Beirut and Sidon. A Lebanese security source confirmed that a rocket hit an area near Naameh, south of Beirut, near a network of tunnels used by the Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine General Command. 4 rockets fired on Thursday caused damage but no casualties in northern Israel. An Al-Qaeda-associated group calling itself the Brigades of Abdullah Azzam claimed responsibility for Thursday's attack on northern Israel. Israeli Defense Minister Moshe Ya'alon called the airstrike a response to the rocket fire and held the Lebanese government responsible for the cross-border attack. US and allied intelligence agencies have made a preliminary assessment that Syrian government forces used chemical weapons to attack an area near Damascus this week, and that the act likely had high-level approval from the Syrian government. US President Barack Obama called on the Syrian president to allow a full investigation by UN inspectors, but admitted he did not expect that cooperation. Meanwhile, Russia's foreign ministry said that Syria's opposition was preventing an objective investigation into allegations the Syrian government carried out a chemical weapons attack. Luay Balkar has more in this report.
Inside this Damascus hotel waits a United Nations inspection team for access to suburbs just a few miles away to investigate reports of what, if confirmed, could be the most lethal chemical weapons attack in decades. Charles Dolfer, a former top US weapons investigator for Iraq, said there is a huge pressure on the UN investigators' future findings.
Everyone is looking to them for their reports and their advice. And that's a lot of pressure to be under when you have someone like the French foreign minister saying, well, if these guys say that chemical weapons have been used, then we are going to react forcefully. Well, that's a lot of responsibility. In essence, they've got their finger on the trigger of the international community where military force can be unleashed.
Dolfer also said the chemical samples collected from the site of the attack could provide a kind of fingerprint as to its source. UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon warned that the use of chemical weapons in Syria would carry serious consequences and said he was troubled by the reports that chemical weapons might have been used.
I'm especially troubled by reports of that chemical weapons might have been used against the civilian populations. Any use of chemical weapons anywhere by anybody under any circumstances would violate international law. Such a crime against humanity should result in serious consequences for the perpetrator.
Speaking from his office at the United Nations in Geneva, Lakhdar Brahimi said he believes the alleged chemical weapon attack should speed up work towards a political solution. Brahimi has also stepped up contacts with senior US and Russian officials to hold an international peace conference.
What has happened, this story, this allegation that chemical weapons have been used a few kilometers from the heart of Damascus, as a matter of fact, emphasizes the importance of this crisis and the danger it represents, not only for the Syrian people, not only for the region, but the world.
British Foreign Secretary William Hague said Britain believes forces loyal to President Bashar al-Assad are behind the chemical weapons attacks. And the priority now is for the UN inspection team in the country to establish the facts of what had happened.
This is not something that a humane or civilized world can ignore. Our priority is to make sure the world knows the facts of what has happened. And that means the UN team that is in Damascus, only 20 minutes travel away, being able to get there and to investigate.
The opposition Syrian National Council said the death toll from the attack is over 1,400 people. That number has not been verified, and the Syrian government still denies it was behind the attack. Meantime, hundreds of Syrians in Aleppo took to the streets to protest against the suspected chemical massacre. They carried posters, chanted Ghouta, where the massacre took place, and accused President Bashar al-Assad's forces of firing rockets loaded with poison gas. Chemical weapons experts say every hour counts. The longer it takes, the more likely evidence can be covered up or tampered with. Louay Belkar for the news at 10.
Still on Syria, 1 million Syrian children have been forced to leave their country after more than 2 years of civil conflict that has seen hundreds of thousands perish. UNICEF and the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees, the UNHCR, said that children make up half of all refugees from the Syria conflict. Most have arrived in Lebanon, Jordan, Turkey, Iraq and Egypt, though increasingly Syrians are fleeing to North Africa and Europe. Latest figures show that some 740,000 Syrian child refugees are under the age of 11. Inside Syria, according to the Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights, some 7,000 children have been killed during the conflict. The UNHCR and UNICEF estimate that more than 2 million children have been internally displaced within Syria.
The number of refugee children coming out of Syria has reached today 1 million. Now, 1 million children is more than the number of children living in Wales. 1 million children is more than the number of children living in Los Angeles and Boston combined. Can you imagine Wales without children? Can you imagine Boston and Los Angeles without children?
More than anything, we need those who have the ability to stop this conflict and those who can influence them to find a political solution before more children suffer. 1 million refugee children, I would say 1 million reasons to act now. We surely cannot continue to fail the children of Syria.
Tunisia's opposition said the government must quit power before they would join negotiations to resolve the country's worst crisis since its Arab Spring revolt, declaring otherwise the talks would be a waste of time. Opposition leaders said an agreement in principle by the Islamist party in Nahda yesterday to start talks soon with the mediation of the country's powerful UGTT Trade Union Federation was only a government attempt to buy more time. Opposition groups went ahead with plans for a large rally tomorrow outside the country's Constituent Assembly in Tunis to pressure the government to quit. We begin with cycling. Javier Acevedo claimed a stage win at the USA Pro Challenge, crossing the finish line in heavy rain in the resort town of Beaver Creek, Colorado. Colombian Acevedo, riding with the James Hagan's Berman team, narrowly beat American TJ Van Garderen to the finish line to take his first stage win of the week. Despite Acevedo's win of stage 4, American Van Garderen has the overall lead of the race. A special ceremony was held in Tokyo to celebrate the city's 2020 Olympics bid 2 weeks before the decision is taken on September 7th. Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe will be going to Buenos Aires, where the vote will be held. Tokyo has also enlisted the help of a cartoon character, Doraemon, a robotic cat, as a special Olympic ambassador. In Tokyo's bid, 85% of the 35 venues would be within an 8-kilometer radius of the Olympic Village. 20 of them would be new and 11 of those would remain as permanent additions to the city's sports facilities.
To inspire me in so many ways.
And the world now marks April 6th as a special day of sport. The United Nations finally adopted the International Day of Sport for Development and Peace with the help of the best tennis player in the world and the president of the International Olympic Committee. Novak Djokovic and Jack Roger addressed a special session of the General Assembly which marked the date of the special day. Finally, a quick look at the weather forecast. Pleasant tonight in the hilly areas, becoming chilly, especially in late night and early morning hours. Winds will be northwesterly, moderate to brisk. Tomorrow, a slight drop in temperatures is expected, so it will be fair in the hilly areas, but it will remain hot in the Jordan Valley. Winds will be northwesterly, moderate to brisk, blowing dust in the desert region. Further south, the Gulf of Aqaba should expect a relatively hot day tomorrow with northerly brisk winds and calm seas. Next are the lows and highs for tonight and tomorrow. Now, the day's top stories, once again. At least 42 people are killed and hundreds wounded in twin explosions in the northern Lebanese city of Tripoli. The UN says that 1 million Syrian children have been forced to leave their country after more than 2 years of civil conflict that has seen hundreds of thousands perish. And Tunisia's opposition says the government must quit power before they would join negotiations to resolve the country's worst crisis since its Arab Spring revolt. And that's the end of tonight's news. I'm Rad Latouche. Thanks for watching. Have a good night.